Hello there. Hi. Assalamu alaikum. This is Amna here from My English Matters. And we are live again today on Tuesday at 10 a.m. So every week we will be going live every Tuesday at 10 a.m. where we share tips and lessons for you to improve your English. And today I am going to be talking about 5 ways that you can train yourself to think in English. So there are going to be 5 ways, and there are also going to be extra tips that I'll share along the way to help you on your journey in training yourself to think in English. Right. So I'm going to share 5 ways that you can think in English. So it's going to be suitable for both people who are in the beginner level of English and also in the advanced level of English. Right? Because we know that a lot of our students and a lot of our people who are subscribed to our email list, they tell us that they struggle to speak in English because they think in their native language. Sorry. So their native language could be, maybe it's Malay for you. My native language is Malay because English is my second language. So maybe you think in Malay and then you have a problem in speaking English because you have to translate Malay to English in your head. So that becomes like an obstacle for you to jump over before you are able to speak confidently, right? So one way that you can speak with confidence is being able to think in English. For me, myself, I tend to think in English in certain situations. When I'm with my family, I tend to think in Malay. Sometimes we don't realize the language that we're thinking in, but if you sit back and you think about it, you can actually know for yourself what language do you think in. Okay. Right. So hi, Akmar, Zarina, Nizam, Atika, Yashrini, Manisa. All right. So great to see you here. Okay, hello, Valerie. I can see you. All right. I am Zafira. I'm going to share 5 ways that you can start thinking in English. So let me know, what language do you think you speak in? Okay. You can think about that for a moment before I begin. Let me know in the comments. So I am going to share with you the first tip to think in English. If you are a beginner, so your level is maybe A1, A2, you can start with this tip first, right? I'm going to go through the most simple tip, and I'm going to go to maybe the tip that's more for the advanced learners. So number 1 is to think in single words. So this is an exercise that you can do in your free time when you are alone. So if you're sitting down by yourself, look at your surroundings and look at the objects that are around you and name them out loud in English. So for example, for me, I can see a computer, right? My mouse, microphone. So try doing that at home right now. I'll do it with you guys. So this is what I see in my house, in my room right now, in my office. Printer, a picture or a picture frame. This is a diffuser, a pot, plant pot, felt tip pens, fake plant. Yeah, that's fake. Books, notebook, ruler. In front of me, I can see a trampoline. Yes, I have a trampoline in this room. An ironing board, an iron, some boxes. So try doing that so that you're training yourself to look at things, daily objects around you, and seeing them in the English language. Well, saying them in the English language, because maybe you already you look at stuff and in your mind, like an iron in Malay is streka, right? So maybe you're thinking streka, but I want you to train yourself to look at that object and say the word in English. So that's tip 1, to think in single words. Okay. Right. Another one, next tip. So after you've been doing that quite often every day, you have to learn how to describe unknown words. So maybe you can't recall the English word for a certain object. So you have to train yourself to describe it in other words. So for example, what is this? This is a ruler, right? So imagine that one day you forget the word for ruler, the English word for ruler, because you know it in, say, Malay, pembaris. How would you describe this? For me, I would say that thing we use to draw straight lines. So you're practicing to describe objects or things in other words. So try doing that. So maybe what you can do at home is you look at the objects around you and try to describe it in another way. Okay, so for example, let me think. Maybe I want to describe the printer. So I've got the English word for printer. I would say the machine that we use to produce documents, right, from the computer on paper, for example. I'm just thinking from the top of my head, right? Another example is maybe you forget the word wardrobe. What would you say? That structure where I put my clothes in. So that could be wardrobe. So try to practice describing objects that you see every day, describing what they are. So here are some phrases. So you can take down these phrases that you can use to describe objects or words that you don't know. It's similar to. Okay, that's one. Another one is it's the opposite of. Here's another one. It's a place where. Another thing is it's something you use to. So I shared with you 4 phrases that you can use to describe unknown words or describe objects if you forget what that object, the English word for that object is. Let me just have a drink of water. Okay, so that was tip number 2. Tip number 1 was to name things in single or think in single words. Number 2, the next step is to describe the objects. Number 3 is to think in sentences. Describe your day. So now we've covered objects. I want you to try to think in sentences and describe your day. Okay, so maybe every day, what do you do every day? Every day I wash the dishes. Okay, we all wash dishes every day. So try to explain that, describe that, what you do every day. So every day I wash the dishes with soap and water. It's a simple thing for you to do, but I know that many of us, we tend to think about the things that we do in Malay. So practice describing the daily activities that you do in English. Okay, try doing that. Another thing, I cook every day, right? That is just like one sentence. Now try adding different sentences afterwards. So for example, let me think. I cook every day, but sometimes when I'm tired, I like to order food online. So you're just adding sentences on the things that you do every day, okay? So that was tip number 3, thinking in sentences. And I want you also to practice saying them out loud. So not just thinking it, but practicing saying them out loud. So you're actually forcing your brain to think in English because you have to speak in English, okay? Tip number 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, tip number 5. Tip number 4. I numbered look at my notebook. It's a mess, isn't it? I numbered it and then I crossed some out because I was practicing. I actually, before this Facebook Live, I rehearse all these points. So when I'm rehearsing, I'm like scribbling here and there so that so now I can't see my own writing. But this is tip number 4. Thinking in conversations. All right. So now you can speak to yourself, talking about your daily activities. Now I want you to practice a conversation where you're actually speaking to yourself. So for example, maybe you are preparing for a job interview. So think of the questions that the interviewer may ask you, right? Think of those questions and then ask yourself the questions. Ask them out loud. Ask them out loud and then answer them out loud. So it seems like you're having a conversation with yourself. Practice doing that. Maybe you're not preparing for a job interview, but think of a daily situation that you're in. Maybe you're always in a conference call, or you're always in a Zoom call with your teammates. Think of the daily stuff that they ask you or they may ask you, and practice answering back in English, right? So ask yourself the question and answer the question yourself. So you're actually speaking to yourself. So it may seem strange for people who are listening to you, but this is your practice. You have to be doing that outside or in a private area where you're by yourself. Okay. It's important to practice. Sometimes we just don't have enough practice because we're always speaking in our native language, right? And the only time where we do speak is at work. So the time for you to practice is when you are at home, in your free time. Can't stress that enough, how important practice is. So that was tip number 4, thinking in conversations. Now, here is the advanced tip for people who are intermediate, okay? How you can start training yourself to think in English, because this was a question that we received from one of our students of Communicate with Confidence. So Communicate with Confidence is our online course for people who want to improve their fluency. So one of our students, she asked us, she shared with us that at work, she speaks in English, but she has a boss who is Malay, and the boss is always speaking Malay to her, but she wants to speak English with him. So what can she do? Right? So because when he speaks English to her, she will tend to answer in Malay. So what can you do in that kind of situation? Now, I just want to share my own story about how I think in English or in Malay. Well, back in my corporate days, I used to work in a telco company. At work, we would speak English. We would write in English. So everything was in English. I would speak to my colleagues in English, with my bosses in English. But when it was lunchtime, I would have lunch with my friends, and some of them were Malay, and we would speak in Malay. Okay, so there was one friend, I would speak Malay with her during lunch. So it was just normal. We just talk about stuff, talk about each other, we talk about our families and stuff. So I would rarely speak to her at work because she was in a different department. But one time, during the office hours, she called me and she wanted to ask me something about work. And because I was used to speaking Malay with her, I tried to speak in Malay. And I felt like I couldn't speak in Malay because it was related to work. Right? So I thought, okay, never mind. I'm just going to speak English to her because it's related to work. So what I want you to do is I want you to have that kind of same perspective where you have different modes for yourself. So one mode is your working mode. So your working mode is you speak in English, but maybe at lunchtime or in casual conversations, your mode is Malay. All right. So think about all the different roles that you play. So you have a role as a friend, or you have a role as an employee, or you have a role as a parent, for example. Think of those different modes, and you can choose which modes that you want to start training yourself to think in English. Okay? So for me, another example is with my family, I speak Malay. And especially with my children, I speak Malay. But recently I told myself, okay, I'm going to speak in English with my children because I want them to be fluent in both English and Malay. At first, it was a bit difficult. The first few days, it was a bit of a struggle because I was not used to speaking English with them. But after a while, it became easier, right? So I was actually training my brain to speak English in that situation. Okay, so I hope that is helpful for you. So for our student who said that her boss always speaks Malay to her, I want you to continue to put yourself in, speak to continue in that mode of working, that working mode where you speak English. So it's okay to answer them in English. So maybe they speak Malay to you, but you can answer them in English. But maybe for like, if they ask you a question that's not related to work, then you can answer in Malay, right? So for example, your boss asks you, Nizam, where's the report? So Nizam will say, or maybe the boss asks you in Malay, Nizam, bila nak hantar report? So Nizam can say, oh, I'll be sending it soon. Okay, that's an example. Or maybe the boss asks you, hey Nizam, how's your children? If you have children, then Nizam will say, Nizam can answer in Malay because it's more of a casual speech, right? So, sihat, anak-anak saya baru nak masuk sekolah. Something like that, okay? So it doesn't seem so weird that you're speaking English to them all the time, but you know that when it comes to work, you're going to speak English. When it comes to everyday casual conversations, gossiping, I don't recommend that you gossip, but things where it's not related to work, then you can speak Malay. So that's my tip, having different modes for speaking. So I hope that's helpful. So I've shared with you the 5 tips on how to think in English. I'm just going to share with you a few more things that you can do, additional things that you can do at home that you have to remember. Number 1 is to be practicing daily. So the tips, the exercises that I've just shared with you, practice them on a daily basis. English, if it's your second language, it doesn't come naturally to you. It is a skill. It's a skill that you have to be practicing. It's just like, if you want to play tennis, okay? Or you want to play badminton. If you don't play it for a while, you're not going to be that good, right? But if you are practicing every day, you will get better. Practicing and learning at the same time. So you have to learn, you have to practice, you have to implement. Another tip is to give yourself time. Don't be so hard on yourself. I know that a lot of us, we are like, we're so hard on ourselves because we can't respond straight away because we are translating in our heads. But just give yourself time and know that it will get easier, right? Don't think that if somebody asks you a question, you have to respond in half a second. Give yourself time, 1 or 2 seconds to think of the answer, calm down, relax, and just know that you have it inside of you to respond accordingly. So don't panic. Another thing a tip that I want you to practice is translating, okay? What I want you to, this whole session is all about thinking in English, but I know that many of you it's going to take time for you to eventually be able to think in English. So maybe your level is like here now, you are trying to translate in English, you're trying to translate from Malay to English in your mind, and it takes you a bit of time. And this is where we want to be, where we are thinking English. But I want you to be like somewhere in the middle here, where it is the process of translating in your head is a bit faster. So you're like in the middle. Now, if you've been following us for quite some time, you'll know that I was working after I left my corporate job, I worked part-time as a translator. So I translated a lot of English to Malay shows and Malay to English. And at first, translating the language was a bit difficult, right? It's not something that comes naturally to you. But the more that I did it, as I became more seasoned in that field, I would translate every single day. It became faster for me to translate English to Malay and Malay to English, to the point where sometimes where I watch an English show, in my mind, I'm translating it in Malay, even though I'm not telling myself to do it. It just comes naturally to me. So, or I'm watching a Malay show and I'm translating it in English. It just happens in my head naturally without me asking for it. It's like an automatic response thing. So I was like here, it was difficult for me to translate Malay to English. But the more that I did it, the process of translating it in my head became faster. So I want you to learn to keep on practicing translating English to Malay so that it becomes faster for you, so that eventually you can start thinking in English, all right? I hope that's helpful. The next tip is to write in English every day. So writing, it may seem a bit weird, like we're talking about speaking, right? Why am I talking about writing? But writing does help you to structure and organize your thoughts. So writing in English every day is helpful. If you don't know what to write every day, I write every single day in the morning and in the evenings. And that does help me to organize my thoughts. Sometimes I have an idea and I write it down, and it helps me to look at things in a broader perspective. Because sometimes we have a lot of ideas in our head, we have a lot of thoughts in our head, but when they come out, it's all over the place. So writing helps to structure that. Maybe you don't know what to write. Maybe one question that you can ask yourself each day is like one thing that you are grateful for today, and just write that down. Just write it down. So once you see your thoughts on paper, you can become a better speaker, because you're used to getting your thoughts out on paper. And then my last tip for you is to listen to English speaking podcasts or English speaking content. It doesn't have to be podcast, but if you do want to listen to podcasts, I would recommend our own podcast. We have our podcast called the My English Matters podcast. We are on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Google Podcasts. Now, I personally like to listen to podcasts while I am cooking or while I am washing the dishes, because I like to learn while I do those kinds of household chores. So I like to do that. And when you are listening to a lot of English speaking content, you will notice that you will learn how they express themselves, how they elaborate. So that would be helpful for you to think, to be able to hear that, so that eventually you are able to speak like them. So I noticed that I listen to like one or two speakers all the time. I listen to one or two podcasts every day. And I tend to pick up on how they speak, like how they emphasize words, how they express themselves, and how they speak. So listen to English speaking podcasts. That way you can also learn pronunciation, how to elaborate, how to speak extemporaneously, and etc. So I hope that has been helpful. Let me know if you have any questions before I go. Okay, let me see some comments. Nadira says, I think it's okay to reply in BM when the person always, most of the time, speaks late to you. It's just respect. Not all people can speak, and some of them, they just don't want to. How can we force people to speak the language that we speak? You can always adjust your mode. Relax. Yes, that's right. Just relax. You don't have to force yourself to speak in a different language if you don't want to. So it's really up to you. Have different modes of speaking. Thanks for sharing, Nadira. Let me see. Do you have any other questions? Nizam says he's preparing for a job interview. Good luck. All right. So it doesn't seem like I have any questions. Right. So thanks for joining me today. I hope you will apply these tips that I've shared with you, okay, on how to think in English, because thinking in English can help you become a more fluent speaker. So we will be back with our Facebook Live next week on Tuesday at 10 a.m. And that's all from me for today. Thank you and Assalamu alaikum.